Hey friends, how are you today? We are gonna see what if Naruto discovered workshop after Naruto meet Anko, Fem kyubbi movie. Kazashi Haruno, father of Sakura Haruno, and current member of the civilian council after he quit being a shinobi, woke up with a deep groan, an overhead light swinging left and right, his vision blurry. He remembered that he was on his way home. Then something hit him from behind. Now here he was, strapped down on some kind of operating table. Was he in a hospital? A morgue? Some kind of laboratory? He heard running water from a sink faucet and turned his head towards its direction. He froze when he saw a familiar mop of spiky blonde hair. Evening, Kazashi-san. I hope you are uncomfortable, yes? The blonde spoke as he turned, while rubbing his wet hands with a cloth. Then he put on a white apron, then continued speaking. Shame all of your constituents have gone missing. Oh wait, it wasn't a shame S8NCE, they were most deplorable people. Kazashi paled at that. For weeks his supporters had gone missing on a regular basis. He had thought one of his political rivals was behind it. But this boy was behind it. What have you done with them? Asked the ex-shinobi as he struggled against the tight restraints. The blonde shrugged and replied in a nonchalant tone, here, there, all over. I kept the pieces I needed. At that last part he picked up a jar containing a pair of lungs. They were excellent throwaway materials. He spoke as he placed the jar with others containing various organs. If you're wondering where you are, well, I trust you heard the legend of the doll maker? Asked the blonde in a jovial manner. The name struck a chord in the pink-haired Mon's memories. The dollmaker was said to be a puppet master that was crippled during the bloody clan wars. He acknowledged that without their puppets then a puppet master would be practically defenseless. So in secret he built a laboratory and decided to create a brand new series of puppets called dolls that could act, move and even think and talk independently from their masters. But his work was left incomplete and he mysteriously vanished from history and his infamous workshop remained undiscovered. Then it passed into little more than urban legend. You are the dollmaker? Asked Kazashi in terror. The blonde boy shrugged and replied yes and no. I am the current dollmaker. My predecessor left all this behind underneath Konoha and I discovered it by happenstance 2 years ago. Since then I was, shall we say, enamored by his work. I have consumed almost all of my free time here, researching how to make dolls. Dolls from all sorts of materials, both organic and non-organic. My using your supporters as materials helped my research and also eliminated some of my tormentors. 2 birds and 1 stone, yeah? The pink-haired man froze in fear. Then he heard the sounds of footsteps. He then saw a woman in an all-black dress and bonnet. Her face was pale, almost porcelain-like, and her hair and eyes appeared to be silvery, but her hands were different. In short, think of the doll from Bloodborne. He could only come to a single conclusion and spoke it out loud. Is she a doll? Naruto said nothing for a moment as the doll bowed slightly and set a tray down on an adjacent table. Your tea and snacks, young master, cream or sugar? She spoke in a soft voice. The blonde replied to her 2 sugars. Thank you, doll. She nodded and prepared his tea for him. In that moment the blonde turned to his captive and answered his question yes. She is, in fact, an actual working doll, my first success. I surpassed the previous dollmaker. You see, in his desire to make the dolls perfect, he forgot a single and essential piece. A power source. He tried electricity, and it was mildly unsuccessful. The dolls could only parrot back some words or small sentences and moved slowly and stiffly like an animatronic. He then tried chakra, which was equally unsuccessful because the chakra couldn't maintain itself long enough for the dolls to activate. Then he decided on one last source, but lacked the resources to acquire it. Biju chakra. Chakra so potent it is said to even saturate the air for a brief period of time. He couldn't get a bit of the stuff, so he have up. I however have an all-access pass, and my precious doll here was a complete success. Kazashi Haruno's blood ran colder and colder. If this boy could actually create dolls like that, he could build a veritable army. Maybe even plant sleeper agents to destroy Konoha from the inside out. The blonde chuckled as he sipped his tea and unfurled a toolkit with various sharp tools, scalpels and other instruments for dissection. I have found condemned men to be honest men. A few weeks ago I was prepping this guy, some banker that worked for you. He was babbling like a baby. Then he told me an interesting story. Something about a woman called Kushina Uzumaki. Said that you wanted her as a trophy wife. She violently rejected you and kicked you in the balls and made your left nut pop. Now, I don't believe in coincidence, so I looked into this Kushina woman. However, I couldn't find any records in either civilian or kunoichi records, which meant one of 2 things. Mr. Banker was lying, or maybe he was telling the truth and this Kushina woman's records were destroyed. If it was the latter, I thought to myself, why destroy the records of a woman that shares my surname? So, tell me about this Kushina woman and I might be persuaded to let you out of my workshop. Kazashi's self-preservation instincts kicked in, so he chose to tell the blonde boy and hoped it would appease him enough to release him. Okay. Ill talk. Kushina Uzumaki was your predecessor. She was the Nidaime Kyubbi Jinchuriki. Many years ago the Uzumakis were a clan and village unto themselves. Konoha and Uzu were allies due to the marriage between Mito Uzumaki and Hashirama Senju. But some years ago, Uzu was attacked by a coalition of villages and was destroyed. The remaining survivors scattered to the winds and Kushina was brought here. She then became a kunoichi who was so fierce and deadly that she became known as Kushina the Evil Uzumaki, a kunoichi that took the scalps of her victims. The name alone was enough to send shivers down the spine of even the Sandaime Reikage, Z. She vanished after the Kyubi attack and the Yondaime passed away. The records were destroyed and all traces of Uzu and the Uzumaki clan were struck from the history books by orders of the Sandaime and the backing of the daimyo. That's all I know, I swear. Naruto digested all of this information as he casually tapped a scalpel against the table. He popped a scone into his mouth and med quietly as he chewed in thought. The doll stood by, waiting for her master's response. Finally the blonde spoke. If Uzu and this Kushina were struck from the records, it is plain to see. There's an entire conspiracy going on, revolving around her, the clan, and myself. Thank you Kazashi-san. That information shall prove most invaluable. I think we're done. With that the blonde jabbed a needle and injected the fluids into the pink-haired man, whose eyes closed almost immediately as he drifted off to sleep. With a jolt Kazashi woke up in his bed, breaking out in a cold sweat. He looked about and found himself in his home. He rubbed his forehead and wondered if the whole thing was some kind of weird nightmare. He saw a feminine figure in his bed next to him and cuddled up next to her. He then noticed something was wrong. She felt cold. He raised an eyebrow at that, wondering what was wrong with his wife. The bedroom door opened, revealing his wife Mebuki, whom yawned and was still fully dressed. She looked at her husband in his bed, then slapped two hands over her mouth, her eyes filled with horror. She broke out a scream and dashed out the door, slamming it behind her. Kazashi then turned to the female he was cuddled next to and flipped on a lamp to see who it was. With a click the lamp bulb flashed on, revealing the female next to him to be a corpse. Her throat had been slashed but was stitched shut and cleaned, and then he noticed various body parts littered around his bed. Horror filled him. His nightmare was real. The Kyubi Brad deliberately planted this corpse and body parts to frame him as some kind of serial killer. He leapt from the bed and tried to open the door, but it had been barricaded from the other side. Mebuki, let me out. I've been framed. I have been framed. That bastard Naruto did this. I've been framed. He screamed in terror as he desperately beat down the down, trying to escape. Downstairs, Mebuki was on the phone, screaming into it, alerting the shinobi on what she had discovered. Some minutes later, Anko Mitarashi arrived with a number of chunin, and arrested Kazashi Haruno on the spot. This is all a mistake. I was framed. I was framed. That Kyubi Brad did this. He framed me, screamed Kazashi, in a tone that only a small child throwing a tantrum could use, combined with kicking the air as he struggled in the chunin's grip. Anko scratched her head as she identified the woman who was still in one piece as a typical Jane Doe, though from the needle marks on her arms and legs she led anything but a clean life. The pink-haired man wailed as they dragged him away and sat him down. The chunin then brought Naruto, whom Kazashi kept claiming was the one who framed him. After the snake mistress explained the situation, the blonde picked his nose and asked, "Let me get this straight. That guy, who's an ex-shinobi, claims that I, an academy student that failed the exam twice, dragged him to some allegedly non-existent workshop of an old legend, interrogated him, drugged him again, dumped him, that corpse, and all his body parts while I sleeping at Kurenai-san's home. And this corpse is a Jane Doe with a cleanly slashed throat which was thoroughly cleaned and expertly stitched shut. And, I am sorry, how could I have done all this?" Anko and the various chunin gave each other odd looks. The kid had a solid alibi. He was staying at Kurenai Yuhi's place, who was a friend of his, and it would be physically impossible for him to do all that heavy lifting by himself. Without another word they dragged away Kazashi, who kept wailing that he was framed. The two pariahs high-fived each other. "Worked like a charm. Thanks for the help in dumping that pedophile in his bed," spoke the blonde. The purple-haired woman replied, "Think nothing of it. That asshole has been stonewalling me from my promotion for years." The blonde's face then turned serious and asked, "Tell me, did you know about my mother?" She was caught off guard for a moment but then kicked up a bit of dirt and replied, "Yeah. I knew, we all did. Kurenai, Yugo, Hana, Sume, everyone. We wanted to tell you so badly, we all tried to adopt you. But Hiruzen stopped us. Even the Aburames, Hyugas, Akamichis, Naras and Yamanakas all tried to put you under protective custody, but were blocked off too. If I had a choice in the matter I would have told you about Kushina-sama in a heartbeat, but if I did, you would have made powerful enemies, enemies you weren't ready for." He considered her words for a moment then replied, "Thank you, at least you kept me in the dark for my protection without an ulterior motive, I can understand that." She nodded in thanks then asked in curiosity, "How'd you know she was your mother?" "I came to that conclusion on my own. Her being the previous Kyubi Jinchuriki, and our sharing the same surname is beyond coincidence." Maybe one day, I'll find her. Till then, I shall continue my research. I think I'll move on to a more advanced project. He was about to leave but he felt a hand grab his shoulder. Naruto-kun, I need a huge favor. I need you to make me a doll. Anko asked in a grave tone. The blonde smiled and replied casually, certainly. What kind? Domestic? Combat? Sparring? She shook her head and spoke even more gravelly as though she felt ill. No, I need you to make me a doll. Naruto felt a chill. Was she seriously asking what he thought she was asking? Anko-chan, I love you and everything, but, do you realize what you are asking? This better not be a sick joke. She shook her head and pulled down the collar of her shirt, revealing her curse mark. Something was off about it. It was pulsing on regular intervals like a heartbeat, and these patterns were beginning to spread across her body. PP, please. You have to help me. I can hear him. Feel him, clawing and whispering in my mind. I feel these invisible hands violating me. I can't take it anymore. I would rather live an unnatural half-life as a doll than to live a cursed life as Orochimaru's plaything. Please? You have to help me, she cried desperately, completely out of character for her. Naruto looked sadly at her. She had protected him, fed him, let him stay at her home, and on her own time taught him how to protect himself. It pained him to see the bold and unyielding Anko Mitarashi crying for his help. He knew that if he refused her, she would without hesitation kill herself to avoid her fate. I can't deny you. I will help. Come to my workshop and I'll fix you up. He spoke as he took her by the hand. She nodded in complete gratitude and followed him to the workshop, which ironically was hidden beneath the Hokage tower. The doll greeted them and asked, welcome young master and mistress Anko. How might I serve? The blonde answered bluntly, fetch me the questionnaire. The doll curtsied and went to fetch the desired item. Naruto sat his longtime friend down and took off her clothes. Leaving her in her birthday suit, with keen surgical precision and without batting an eye, he took her measurements, from her breasts, waist and hips, down to her legs and arms, her neck, her head, and even her fingers and toes, and measured. Anko was impressed. A hot naked babe like herself in front of a hormonal academy student, and he didn't so much as blush. Okay, maybe she saw some blushing, but he was damn good at hiding it and maintaining a professional attitude. When he was done taking all of her measurements, the doll passed her a pen and notepad. The kunoichi skimmed over the contents of the paper and found a number of yes or no questions like, do you want to have children in the future? Or do you want to continue to eat and or drink? And more humorously, do you want to continue using the restroom? Things like that to ensure she gets the functions and type of body she wants. After checking off the questions, she handed the notepad to Naruto. He read over her answers carefully, then nodded, and began working at almost godlike speed. He brought forth the doll body and got to work on placing and replacing the desired parts, from the fingers and toes, the arms and limbs, and so on. Within minutes the doll body looked less like a doll and more like Anko. What's more is that it looked completely human, no ball joints or anything to distinguish it from human or doll. She even touched its face and breasts and found them to feel exactly like human flesh and skin. How the fuck did you make this? The blonde chuckled and answered, long explanation or saving your life. She scowled at the question, but then shrugged, choosing to avoid the long and probably boring explanation. She lied down on the operating table and took some deep breaths. Tears filled her eyes, as she sniffled and spoke barely above a whisper, Naruto-kun, I am scared. She felt so helpless and vulnerable right now. She squeezed his hand tightly. She wasn't sure how she felt. She never trusted doctors to patch her up. So she almost always healed herself, but now she was going to undergo a massive surgery, and the one operating on her was her best friend, and the only man she ever cared for after Orochimaru's betrayal. I am so scared. I don't. The blonde rubbed her head tenderly. Don't worry, Anko. I promise when you wake up, you will be a whole new woman. Nothing bad will happen. He spoke softly, understanding she was literally putting her life in his hand. Don't leave me alone, okay? I don't want to wake up alone, she asked him, to which he nodded and replied, I want, for you, it'll only be a few seconds. I promise, she nodded as he placed a mask over her face, the anesthesia putting her to sleep. Before she closed her heavy eyelids she moaned out, Naruto, I love you, and with that she had fallen asleep. He freed his hand from her now relaxed grip and put on his apron and gloves. He picked up the needed surgical tools and whispered, I love you too, and so I shall make you into my finest work. I will save you. With that, he cut into her and opened up her body, his absolute resolve to save his best friend's life from the curse mark, which plagued her for so long. Anko's eyes fluttered open, her breath was shaky as she slowly sat up from a small bed. In a corner sat her best friend, and the one she confessed to, Naruto, who was reading a magazine. Without looking up from it he spoke normally. My previous subjects woke up 2 hours after surgery was completed, but knowing you would cut that time in half. She smiled brightly. He had kept his promise and stayed with her. She then felt a little off and spoke, hey, I feel funny, numb actually. He casually turned a page and replied calmly, don't worry, The numbness is normal, you are integrating into the new body. Try walking around, feeling will come back. She nodded as she slowly got up and began walking around the bed, keeping a hand on it for support in case she lost her footing. As she slowly circled it, she saw a cart with a body on it, covered by a sheet. Is that what's left of me? Her friend could only reply as he tossed aside the magazine. Yes, it is. The doll is taking it to the crematorium. She nodded in understanding and continued to walk, feeling slowly coming back to her as she felt the cold stone floor beneath her feet. She found her clothes on a nearby table and began dressing, not at all concerned she was giving Naruto a reverse striptease. She sighed and clenched her fists, a small smile adorning her lips. Wow, I feel good, better than ever. I feel so much lighter. With a sharp snap, she kicked a nearby wall, making a portion of it explode under her heel. She could very well have done that in her previous body, but this felt like she was no longer constrained by limits of the flesh. The blonde clapped slowly and asked, "Happy customer?" The purple-haired woman nodded vigorously, then spoke with a large grin. "Hell yeah, but what did you mean by previous subjects?" The blonde scratched the side of his face and answered casually, "I might have collected on unwilling subjects of whom the population wouldn't miss. Rapists, child molesters, the works. ID perform the same operation on them, only ID use more fragile materials which are much less aesthetically pleasing, and without working limbs. When I gathered the necessary data, they were, shall we say, disposable." Anko blinked several times and muttered, "Damn. I wonder if hanging around me is a bad influence." Her longtime friend waved her off and replied, "Don't worry about it. Having a non-existent childhood like mine can mess with your head regardless. Much as ID love to stay, I need to swing by the academy. I am running late, but I needed to keep my promise to you." She was touched by that. She looked about and found a pen and paper and wrote down a small note. "Here, an excuse note explaining you were absent because you were helping me out." She spoke as he accepted the note with a grateful nod, and began to leave. He turned and asked the doll who was prepping Anko's old body, "Is your sister still working on acquiring that thing?" The silvery-haired doll nodded and replied, "Yes, young master, she is almost done in acquiring the item on your requisition order." He nodded and left the workshop as Anko kept pacing to get used to her new body. The silvery-haired doll took notice of a small box on her master's desk and muttered, "Oh dear, the young master forgot his lunch. He gets so cranky on an empty stomach." Later, at the academy, Naruto swiftly arrived towards his classroom and entered in the middle of Iruka's lecture. The scarred Chunin glared at the whiskered teen and asked, "Care to explain why you're so late for class? And do try to give a good excuse." The blonde boy shrugged and spoke plainly, "Sure. I was performing a highly complicated surgery on Anko Mitarashi." The entire classroom stared at the blonde with an expression that read, "Da fuck?" At that one, Kiba Inuzuka sat up, asking, "You serious, man?" The Jinchuriki only replied, "Meh, not really." The entire class face vaulted as the blonde whispered, "To no one I tell the truth and these idiots don't believe me. Hell, I could tell them I framed Kazashi Haruno and they'd think I was lying." Iruka was about to yell at Naruto, but a sharp slap rang out as the student planted the excuse note onto the Chunin's face. The teen went and took a seat next to Ino Yamanaka as the Chunin skimmed over the excuse note. Iruka grumbled, then tossed the note in a nearby trash can. "You are off the hook this time, Naruto, but don't make this a habit." The blonde casually waved him off, knowing that this was going to be an interesting day. As the day dragged on and the scarred Chunin droned on and on with the same tedious lectures he gave day after day, Naruto pretended to listen while in his head he was coming up with designs for a new doll to make. Finally the bell rung, signaling lunchtime. Two female students noticed Naruto was without a lunch. Hinata Hyuga approached and bowed while producing her lunch as though it were an offering. "And Naruto-kun, if you want I'd happily share with you." In response the blonde put a finger underneath her chin and spoke in a tone with a slight edge to it, "Hinata, what have I said?" She gulped and replied quietly, "Speak directly and clearly or don't speak at all." He scowled and put more pressure under her chin and muttered louder. At that she straightened up and spoke slightly louder than need be, "Speak directly and clearly or don't speak at all." He nodded in satisfaction. Ever since he took note of her crush on him and saw her lack of confidence, he decided to try and help her out. Whenever he spoke to her she would turn away or severely stutter. In order to stomp out those habits he gave her the rule to speak directly and clearly or don't speak at all. It took some time, but she was steadily improving. She had even begun to become more and more independent, which was a major improvement. If he was going to have a girlfriend, he wanted the type that could stand on their own feet, not lean on him as a crutch. One Ino came next and slammed her bento down with a huff as she turned her head with a faint pink color dusting her cheeks. "Please. Her bento is filled with cinnamon buns. You need something nutritious, you asshole." She spoke harshly while crossing her arms. He and Ino had an interesting love-hate relationship. She would often call him names like "you bastard" or "asshole" or "damn womanizing pervert." But he knew there was no ill intent. It was kind of a game they played. "That so? Still on a diet, ya blonde bimbo?" He chuckled with a warm smile. She slammed her fists on the desk and yelled, "Take that back. You convinced me to quit dieting when you said it'd stunt my growth as a kunoichi and as a woman. Hell, just last night I had steak. They glared at each other for a brief moment, then bust out laughing as though there was some hidden joke involved. Much as I appreciate the offers, ladies, my lunch shall be arriving any minute now, he spoke as the two sat on either side of him and scooted closer up to him, disappointed that he turned down their offers, but curious about what he meant. Does it have anything to do with your what was it called again? Asked the Hyuga heiress. A question mark popped over Ino's head as she spoke while scratching her head. I think it was something about revolutionizing the puppetmaster industry. This idiot likes to talk in riddles. Right when she finished that sentence, the door to the classroom opened, revealing a woman dressed in black, with a bonnet. She approached the blonde's desk and produced a bento. Your lunch, young master. At that, the whole classroom froze and their minds all had a single thought: who the hell is she and why did she call the dead last young master? The blonde boy accepted the bento and smiled. Thank you, doll, much appreciated, he spoke, prompting her to curtsy to him in reply. Of course, young master, may I be of any further service? Before Naruto could speak, Iruka clapped a hand on her shoulder and spun her around, his face inches from hers as he asked in an accusative tone, who the heck are you and why are you calling Naruto young master? Without batting an eye she replied, I have no given name other than doll, or sometimes the doll. I am a fully autonomous and independent doll created by my young master, Naruto Uzumaki, whom I faithfully serve. Kindly take your greasy hand off of my dress. I had it recently cleaned. The Chunin reeled back, shocked by her explanation and clearly offended about his hand being called greasy. Shino Aburame spoke up in his usual monotone voice. Naruto-san, did I hear her correctly? You created her? The blonde was busy feasting on his lunch but managed to speak. Yep, I made her. Isn't she cool? I also made a sister for her called Ashlot. Ashlot is currently raiding the Uchiha cemetery for the remains of one Mikoto Uchiha. The entire classroom gawked at him on that last bit. Sasuke screamed in outrage. Are you serious, Dobi? The blonde dollmaker replied bluntly, not really, she's just running an errand for me. At that the whole classroom face vaulted as the blonde spoke to no one. These idiots clearly are a bunch of baboons with the base intelligence of toddlers. I bet I could murder the Hokage and confess about it and they wouldn't believe, ignorant fools. Who are you talking to, Naruto-kun? Asked Hinata, to which her crush answered, my audience. Don't worry about it. The two girls clinging to him wasn't sure what he meant, but passed it off as some kind of weird quirk. Naruto, wait here while I get the Hokage, spoke Iruka as he dashed off towards the Hokage tower. Unknown to him, he was playing along to Naruto's plan like the hapless idiot he was. Deep down Naruto knew it was a matter of time before his precious dolls were discovered, so he decided to reveal them now and pass them off as his own original work, which was in a way true since he finished what his predecessor could not. A few minutes later, in a swirl of leaves, the Hokage and Iruka appeared in the classroom. Hiruzen approached the doll and inspected her closely, marveling at how lifelike she looked, and even by her facial expression, which showed disgust. Kindly step away. The smell of whatever you were smoking is most repulsive, she spoke in a somewhat icy tone. You created this thing? The Sandame spoke while pointing at the doll with his thumb, to which Naruto answered, yep, I made her, gave her life, isn't she cool? In response the Sandame sputtered, then asked in shock, how did you make it? That is classified, the Jinchuriki curtly replied. How does it work? Classified, how did you make it come to life? Classified, the Sandame sighed in frustration. Clearly the boy wasn't going to reveal his secrets. How much does it cost? He asked, hoping to bribe the boy. Kindly stop referring to me as it, I find that offensive, the doll spoke, in a tone that showed her immediate dislike of the Hokage. 999 quadrillion, spoke the blonde to answer Hiruzen's question. The Hokage's threatened to pop out of his head at such a sum. That's outrageous. Konoha could never pay that much money in 100 years. He cried out in shock. Exactly the point, because I am not selling her, she's mine. I made her myself and so she's mine. She is my precious doll. The dollmaker stated bluntly, knowing full well Hiruzen wanted to have her reverse engineered. Not that anyone could make her function correctly anyway if they attempted to copy her. But Naruto-kun, think of the possibilities with this kind of. The aged Hokage tried to speak but was cut off by the blonde. The technology and designs behind it are mine and mine alone. You want dolls? Then you buy them directly from me. Furthermore, I want an official clan of my own when I graduate from this godforsaken academy, and I also require a public workshop to make any dolls I sell to the public. Hiruzen grit his teeth angrily. This cheeky brat was extorting him and he knew it. Are you serious? The Sandame shouted, his normal facade cracking. Dead serious, old man. Dead serious. My demands aren't met, then I am certain a few letters to the other major villages will certainly get me offers. The whiskered teen spoke casually yet also with an undertone of superiority. Iruka couldn't believe this. That brat was actually threatening to sell to foreign villages instead of his own? It was insane. Finally Hiruzen relented and spoke with every ounce of professionalism he could muster. Fine then, you have a deal. Any particular name you want your clan under? The blonde boy grinned darkly then answered the Uzumaki clan. The Sandaime yelled as he put a hand to his chest as though he had been stabbed through the heart. Of all the names the Kyubi brat had to pick, it had to be that thrice damned Uzumaki clan. Did he choose the name out of convenience from his own surname or was it a deliberate insult to the Hokage and Konoha itself? He couldn't tell. Fine, have a nice day. Naruto ground out the Sandaime as he stomped out of the classroom. I win, yelled Naruto triumphantly. His plan had worked flawlessly. My apologies if I caused any inconvenience, young master, spoke the doll. He waved her off and spoke to her in a rather joyful tone. Relax, it was bound to happen, better now than later. She nodded and bowed to him and left the classroom. After this exchange had ended, the entire classroom shouted, what the fuck just happened? Meanwhile, in the Uchiha cemetery a lone figure was walking through. Inspecting the gravestones, it was a doll with purple hair. She was Ashlot, the sister of the doll. Ashlot was specifically designed to be a combat-type doll. I do not understand why Papa needs the remains of this Makoto. Her squishy parts must be non-existent now, so he can't make a doll out of her. She spoke to herself in thought. The purpose behind this errand confused her, but her papa's orders were absolute and she would hate to disappoint him. At long last she had found the appropriate grave. She clenched her armored fist and slammed into the ground. Then with a mighty heave she pulled up the whole coffin. Why do these fleshy things bury their bodies when they cease functioning? Humans confuse me, Papa too, but maybe he knows something I don't, she muttered as she hefted the coffin onto her shoulder and marched off back to her home. As she walked back to the entrance of one of many network tunnels that led to the workshop, she was faced with some sickly-looking chunin that wouldn't stop coughing. She suspected he was on patrol and found her of a suspicious nature, especially since she was holding a coffin. Kindly get out of my way, fleshy thing. I have no fight with you, she stated as she brandished her weapon. A strange hybrid axe with a lance on one end and on the other an axe-like blade with the resemblance of an Iron Maiden. The chunin coughed several times and replied back, no can do. Put down the coffin, now. Ashlot shook her head several times and spoke in a confused manner. Why does a fleshy thing like you care about the contents of this box? The body inside no longer functions, there is no purpose in protecting it. Hayate noticed the heart-shaped hole in her stomach area, revealing the gears and clockwork inside. Clicking and whirring away, he realized she wasn't human. He drew his blade and charged her, aiming for the hole in her stomach. Suddenly he stopped mere inches from her, his blade stopped by an invisible force. Why did you attempt to harm me? I have done nothing wrong, nor did I do anything to you. A fleshy thing like you is annoying, she spoke coldly, then spun her axe around and stabbed him in the gut with the lance end. Papa would be angry at me for murdering a pitiful fleshy thing like you. So I shall leave you functional. Goodbye, human. She pulled her weapon out and marched on. She knew her papa would take care of this later. Her mission accomplished, she continued on to home. Somewhere in Konoha, Anko Mitarashi was walking down the street with a spring in her step and happily humming a tune. She was going to treat herself to some dango. Maybe even get a doggy bag of dango for her favorite blonde to thank him. Ever since the operation she felt better than ever. Maybe it was because she was free of the curse mark's corrosive influence. Maybe it was happiness. Who knows? She didn't care. Of course, just dango wasn't nearly enough to cover for what Naruto did for her. She had a better idea. She was going to take him on as her apprentice. Graduation was only a week away, so no biggie there. Yo, Anko, yelled a voice from behind her, belonging to one Kakashi Hitaki. Oh, hey Kakashi. Y'all want something? I am kinda busy here, going on a dango run, gracing the little and insignificant people with my presence, that sort of thing. She spoke as she stuck a finger in her ear to clear it out, or at least pretend to. The masked Jonin chuckled and replied, heard you were one of the people that arrested Kazashi Haruno. Nasty business. Who would have thought he was a serial killer and a necrophiliac? I heard that Mebuki and Sakura are undergoing counseling, though Sakura should be released before academy graduation. Anko continued pretending to clear out her ear and asked him, you say something? Kakashi face planted at that since she used one of his signature lines against him. Well, whatever, if ya don't have any business with me then I am leaving. I am gonna submit an application for taking an apprentice. She spoke as she began to walk away. The masked Jonin stopped her and spoke to her ma. Don't be that way, out of curiosity. Who you taking as an apprentice? Someone special like Sasuke. The newly made doll smirked and replied in a tone that could be described as a predator playing with its food special. Yes, like Sasuke. No, Naruto Uzumaki is who I am taking. The sound of glass shattering rang through Kakashi's head. The snake mistress taking the Kyubi Jinchuriki as an apprentice. Ha ha ha. Good one, Anko. You got me. He laughed out loud, thinking it was a joke. She pretended to pick her nose and replied, who said I was kidding? I am serious. No one knows him better than me. We're best friends. totally compatible, we know and understand each other, I am the perfect choice of teacher for him. Let's not forget you are lazy, a pervert, and have zero experience in teaching genin, spoke Kakashi, as he read a certain orange book. If nothing else, I am not a hypocrite, spat Anko angrily. The masked Jonin chuckled kinda awkward since I am going to request Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto for my team. At that the snake mistress saw red and grabbed him by the collar, then brought him in close and headbutted him, breaking his nose with a loud snap. He yelled in pain as she grabbed his Jonin vest and lifted him up in the air. Lemme tell ya something, Kakashi Hitaki. Naruto is going to be my student, and you can bet your hypocritical ass I can and will fight you tooth and nail for him, and I will win. End of story. If you ever come close to my Naruto-kun, I will kill you outright. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? She screamed in pure rage. Yes. Yes. The silver-haired Jonin squealed in a girlish tone, terrified of Anko's wrath. With a grunt she tossed him to the dirt and spoke with pure venom coating her speech. Good. I promise you, Hitaki, if you steal my Naruto-kun, I will murder you in your sleep, and I will enjoy doing it. The crazed look in her eyes made him back away on the ground, desperately trying to get some distance from her. With a huff she marched off to drown herself in dango and booze, and of course put in that application. Behind her Kakashi muttered to himself, why did that crazy woman keep saying my Naruto? Graduation day was at hand and Naruto was reading a newspaper as the doll prepared his morning tea. The headline of the paper showed that Kazashi had been recently hanged for the murders he had been convicted of, and on the next page one Hayate Gecko had been attacked. From the papers it said he has been fading in and out of consciousness. Whenever he came to he would deliriously mumble something about a woman with purple hair and clockwork insides. The blonde knew that this was Ashlot's doing. He would have to rectify this particular problem. In the meantime he would go and be the good genin and pass that boring and tedious exam. As the doll poured his cup of tea, one Yugo Azuki entered and spoke with a worried expression. Naruto-kun, what is going on? Your doll Ashlot put Hayate-kun in the hospital. Please tell me this was an accident. The blonde set the paper down, pleased that Yugo came so quickly after he informed her of the situation. Bad luck, I am afraid. Ashlot was running an errand I sent her on, and poor Hayate unwittingly got in the way. According to Ashlot, he attacked her first. The purple-haired woman crossed her arms and almost yelled as she raised her voice. That can't be right. Hayate-kun wouldn't attack for no reason, she must be lying. The dollmaker took a sip of tea and spoke in a calm voice. You are angry and upset, I understand that, but believe me when I say, dolls can't lie. They don't understand the concept of lying, at least, those like Doll and Ashlot can't. Yugao sighed. She knew he was right, she was just so angry she needed to place the blame on something. Why do you insist on calling your first creation doll? Why not give her a proper name? She asked, since that had been bugging her for some time. Naruto glanced at the silvery-haired doll and replied back to the Anbu, believe me, I have tried giving her every name from A to Z, but she refuses them all and even formally requested that I call her by what she is rather than a falsely given title, and I didn't understand that either, so I gave up and just called her doll. The Anbu woman glanced at the doll and med in thought, but she dismissed the lack of name for her and returned to the immediate matter at hand. All right then, please tell me, what should we do about Hayate-kun? Naruto set down his cup of tea and pushed it to one side. He locked his fingers together and spoke in a serious tone of voice. That entirely depends on you, Yugo Azuki. Hayate-san is a decent enough guy. He was just doing his job. Maybe he could be an ally, but he can also be an enemy. I leave his fate in your hands, but I must ask you which you are willing to gamble on, the village of Konoha? Or the legacy of the Uzumaki? Be very careful. Yugo stiffened at that. From his tone, it felt like she was being tested. With a turn of her heels she went to visit her boyfriend at the hospital. The doll looked at her master and asked him, young master, was that wise? Why not go and silence this Hayate? The blonde got up from his seat and stretched his arms. Relax, doll. I wouldn't worry too much. I am no fool. I admit I might be gambling here, but I have two things that provides me an edge. The luck of the devil, and a deep understanding of human nature's capacity for good and evil, and I am confident that my gamble shall pay off. He spoke with a large grin. He exited the workshop, leaving a perplexed doll, who wondered what her master meant by that statement. Meanwhile, in the Hokage office, a large number of Jonin were reading dossiers on the various students to select their teams, though a number had already selected their teams from the clan heirs who were pretty much shoo-ins. Kurenai Yuhi and her not-so-secret boyfriend Asuma had submitted their requests. Kakashi, however, was about to submit his, but Anko beat him to the punch as she proudly declared, for my apprentice I request Naruto Uzumaki. All the Jonin excluding Kurenai and Kakashi were stunned by this. Anko requesting a student out of the blue? That was insane. The masked Jonin chuckled and spoke to the Hokage. For my team, I request Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno and Naruto Uzumaki. At that Hiruzen grumbled in thought. Either of those two might be good teachers for Naruto, but neither had any actual teaching experience. Kakashi was the student of Minato, but he also has a fierce dedication to Obito's memory. Anko was Orochimaru's student, but from the rumors he heard, she and Naruto were far more than friends, lovers according to some sources. Each had advantages and flaws. He couldn't decide. Oi now Hitaki. I called for him first. And besides, Naruto and Sasuke on the same team is a disaster waiting to happen. The snake mistress yelled angrily as she got into Kakashi's face. You and Naruto together is most certainly a fuckfest waiting to happen. Everyone knows what you did with Orochimaru during long-term missions, spoke Kakashi, deliberately provoking Anko. At that everyone, including Hiruzen, got as far back as they could. Anko's face burned a dark red as though she was about to explode. Don't go there, Hitaki. Don't go there. I am still a virgin. She spoke angrily, as her fists clenched and her body seemed ready to pounce on the copy ninja at a moment's notice. And what proof do you have of that? Unless you mean you're still an anal virgin. Kakashi asked, further pushing her buttons. Fuck it, you aren't even worth it. You're trying to provoke me into punching your lights out. It's gonna take more than that to make me snap. She spoke as she shoved him back. The Jonin and Hokage were impressed at her fortitude but knew if the copy ninja kept pushing, it wasn't a matter if she snapped but when. Please, it is no secret, your relationship with the Uzumaki boy, Kakashi said in a final attempt to provoke her. Excuse me, the snake user asked, annoyance in her voice. Please, the boy has been seen repeatedly at your apartment. I once overheard Kurenai say that you and Naruto sleep in the same bed, Kakashi stated and pointed a finger at the genjutsu user, who felt like she wanted to disappear. She had only mentioned that in passing to Hana. She meant nothing harmful by it. HMPH, you're no different from Orochimaru, like student like sensei. That statement was the final straw for Anko. She screamed and tackled him, making the two fall out of the window. Fuck you, Hitaki. My sensei was a cold-hearted bastard. She screamed as the two landed on the ground safely by focusing chakra to their feet to soften the landing. With unnatural speed, Anko socked the masked Jonin across the face. He didn't care about anything but himself. She sent a kick to his torso, making him fall to the ground and cough blood. I left him after he used me as a damn guinea pig. She punched him across his left temple. I never fucked him or had any sexual attraction to him. A backhand strike across the right temple. I am nothing like him. She stomped on his ribs. I have never touched or molested poor Naruto-kun. Ever. She kicked him across the jaw. I was always there for him when he needed me. I didn't save him. He saved me from myself. She stomped on his spine as he attempted to crawl away. He never deserved the treatment that destroyed his childhood, and I don't deserve being called a whore or a pedophile or orochimarus slut. At last she stomped on the copy ninja's manhood, making him yowl in pain and pass out. She panted tiredly. Years of anger and frustration had finally come to a boil. She didn't regret beating her colleague within an inch of his life. She wouldn't regret it if he died. He meant nothing to her. All that mattered was the one light in her miserable life. Naruto. Hiruzen emerged from the tower, along with a number of Jonin. The Sandaime shook his head, not understanding why Kakashi would so childishly attempt to provoke Anko. Figuratively speaking, he was poking a black mamba with a stick and making it madder and madder until it finally struck. It would seem, Team 7 is in need of a sensei. Anko, would you care to take this team? Asked the Sandaime, trying to salvage the situation. The snake mistress clenched her fist, amazed she couldn't feel pain after punching Kakashi so hard. Yeah, fine. I'll do it, for Naruto's sake. Hiruzen nodded, accepting that, and went back to his office to call for medics. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Yugo, in more casual attire, entered Hayate's room. He was sleeping peacefully after he had been stabilized. She made sure he hadn't spoken anything incriminating about Ashlot to the doctors. Fortunately, he was too delirious to form eligible words. She took away the small remote that had the call nurse button. She gulped and hoped that Hayate could be convinced to help Naruto's plans. She gently nudged him awake. His eyes slowly opened and he saw the beautiful face of his girlfriend. He coughed several times and spoke hoarsely. Why, Yugo? Glad to see you. She smiled warmly and planted a kiss on his forehead. Good to see you too. She spoke softly. He coughed again, then croaked out, listen, you gotta call the Hokage. Some strange woman with clockwork inside has been robbing graves. She looked at him sadly and explained in a gentle tone, yes, I know, her name is Ashlot. She is a doll created by Naruto Uzumaki. He sent her for the coffin of Makoto Uchiha. He sputtered out, how do you know? Unless, he trailed off, prompting her to answer him, yes. I am involved, have been involved. I have assisted Naruto by abducting numerous people. The worst kind of people, rapists, pedophiles, the worst types of people. He used them for experiments in creating dolls with human parts. Naruto interrogated Kazashi and pressed him for information regarding Kushina. When he was finished, he and Anko framed Kazashi as a killer as punishment for stonewalling Anko's promotion and bribing the Chunin to rig his tests during his previous years at the academy. Hayate was stunned, but then he asked her, so, an innocent man was executed? She shook her head yes and no. He was innocent of the crime he was convicted of, but he was guilty of numerous other crimes of which he was never punished. Why? Why? Why would you help a murderer? Asked the sickly Chunin in horror. Yugo glared at him and spoke in harsh tone. Naruto-kun might be a killer, but he's no murderer. He has not once ever killed someone without a reason or said someone was guilty of something. And, more importantly, he is Kushina-sama's legacy. He glared at her, then spat out, you still serve that monster even after she's gone? You're an Anbu. Your first and foremost duty is to Konoha, not a savage like that Uzumaki woman. The female Anbu clenched her fists. She has a name, Kushina the evil Uzumaki, and her child, Naruto, deserves the respect he has been denied. She spoke, her eyes burning with an intense rage. Please, they are irrelevant. Who are you going to choose? Me or them? He asked, believing Yugo's love for him and her duty to Konoha would help her see the light. Come on Yugo, we need to go to the Hokage. Your testimony shall put the Kyuubi Jinchuriki away for life. And she cut him off and spoke angrily. He has a name, not Demon Brat, not Kyuubi Jinchuriki, not the dead last. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, child and legacy of Kushina. Remember that, and I choose them, not you. Without another word, she snatched the pillow from under his head and pressed it against his face. He struggled and his screams were muffled under the pillow. She turned her head away as tears streaked down her face. It was too late now. She had a duty to fulfill, to protect Naruto. That was more important than anything, even her own selfish desires. The Chunin's struggling grew fainter and his cries grew quieter, until at last he remained still. She sniffled and replaced the pillow under his head and exited the room. She took several breaths to calm herself, then made a quick exit, knowing that a crash cart would be there soon, though they were already too late. At the academy, Naruto Uzumaki looked down at his classmates from his seat in the back row. He had passed the exam with flying colors. The written test was predictable as it was simple. The jutsu part was equally simple. Since Anko had taught him how to use shadow clones when he failed on his second year, he got the highest marks. And a self-proclaimed avenger was glaring daggers at the dollmaker. Hinata and Ino sat on his left and right respectively. Good work Naruto-kun. I am so glad you got the highest marks, spoke the shy Hyuga. Ino however scoffed and spoke, please. Any actual genin worth their salt could pass this thing with their eyes closed. Naruto chuckled and said to his fellow blonde, then I am glad you worked hard on getting the jutsu portion right. The written exam has been reduced to a simple formality for the most part. The two couldn't argue with that, and glared at Sasuke, who had received the title as Rookie of the Year. But the Uchiha was unsatisfied by this because the title rang hollow ever since Naruto revealed his accomplishments in creating an actual working doll. The story about that incident had spread about like wildfire. Shinobi all about Konoha were amazed that they had a puppet master in their midst that could create dolls that were fully independent and self-aware. It would make Suna green with envy. Then rumors circulated that Naruto was going to have a shop opened where he could make and sell dolls to the public. Sasuke glared jealously at the blonde for becoming so famous in a short amount of time, but he scoffed and decided to let the Dobi play with his dollies. The Avenger would train and surpass Madara once he unlocked his Sharingan, then the Dobi would be forgotten. Unknown to the Avenger, Naruto could already tell what he was thinking. He smirked and spoke to no one in particular. Typical self-indulgent narcissist. The imbecile thinks he is a gift to the world granted by the heavens. The thing is about Uchihas is that in some way or another they are all the most selfish assholes in the world, and that goes double for the golden boy there. Let's see how he likes it when I steal his thunder. Whore talking to? Asked Ino, looking towards the direction of her fellow blonde's gaze, which was a wall. No one really, you wouldn't understand. He dismissed her question, making her puff her cheeks and turn away. After that exchange the teams were being announced. At last it came down to Team 17-7 is Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno. A cheer rang out from Sakura, who was still trapped in a fangirl phase. Naruto and Sasuke deeply glared at each other, both imagining the other being humiliated. Suddenly something crashed through the window. The bundle of cloth unfurled and revealed a banner that read the taken but still sexy and ever gorgeous Anko Mitarashi. Said woman stood in front of the banner and shouted "Heyo!" and flashed the victory sign. The entire classroom stared in shock at the unorthodox entrance, and the boys, excluding Sasuke, stared at Anko's expressive state of dress. Howdy. I am Team 7 Super Hot Sensei. Ya better get down here. No time like the present. Chop chop. Naruto wasn't fazed by her antics as he got up and spoke in a casual tone, always with the theatrics. Much as I love you, ya ever think of dressing more modestly? He questioned as he got down to the front of the class and approached her. She chuckled and replied, maybe, but I find that kinda thing too stuffy. I am a free spirit, and since you're now an official genin, we can do some awesome things together. She smirked at the end. The blonde chuckled and teased her, that's so. Who would have thought you liked them young? A faint pink color rose to her cheeks, but she laughed heartily and shoved his face between her generous breasts. Ya damn cheeky brat. Anko-sama's gonna punish you for back-talking her by smothering you with her tits. Iruka, Yumino and Mizuki passed out from sheer blood loss. Kiba wasn't far behind. Various boys and a few girls blushed darkly at this odd exchange. Finally the snake user released him. He slapped her on the shoulder and spoke with a large grin. Being smothered in those pillows would certainly make me die happy. The two exchanged a hearty laugh as Sakura and Sasuke finally approached. This is our sensei. What a weirdo, and what's with those revealing clothes? Thought Sakura, who was expecting something entirely different for a jonin. So long as this slovenly dressed woman can make me stronger than him, I don't care, thought the Avenger with his hands in his pockets. Welp, anyway, I'll meet you brats at Training Ground 44 tomorrow at 5 AM sharp, don't be late. Spoke the jonin in a cheerful tone. So early, squealed the pink-haired genin in dismay. The snake user pretended to pick her nose and replied, yep, you think the enemy on the field of battle is gonna let you get a full night's sleep? Hell no. Iruka regained enough consciousness to listen in, and then he decided to put in his suggestion. Anko-san, they are just children. You should push them so hard, and why must you act like the third shinobi war never ended? The snake user's arm snapped in the chunin's direction, gripping him by the throat as she spoke in a cold and hardened voice. Firstly, I don't give a rat's ass about what you think. The second they put on those headbands they abandoned all rights to be treated as children, and secondly, when did the war ever end? A stiff breeze ominously blew through the broken window, sending a chill down the genin's spines. In an instant her expression shifted back into that happy tone as she spoke. Well, enough about this stick in the mud. Don't be late, Team 7, or Anko-sama shall pleasantly punish you. TTFN. Ta-ta for now. With that she ran out and leapt through another window, breaking it. Use the door already like a normal person. Screamed the classroom, while Naruto chuckled knowing that this team won't be so bad after all. Back at the hidden workshop. Are you sure this is what Papa wanted? Asked Ashlot as she ground up a number of bones into powder. Doll stood by and replied to her sister, I am certain. The young master requested most specifically to grind a few bones into powder. I inquired why, but he said it was part of his project. The purple-haired doll raised an eyebrow and muttered, I love Papa, but this is strange. First he wants me to steal a coffin of a non-functional human, whose squishy parts are non-existent. Now he wants her bones ground into powder. This is too strange. Her silvery-haired sibling nodded in agreement. I concur, sister. It is unusual, but the young master doesn't do anything without some type of reason or purpose. Perhaps he knows something we don't. Maybe, but if it makes Papa happy, I'll do it for him. Still, what's so special about this Makoto Uchiha? Asked Ashlot in curiosity. Her sibling med for a moment, then replied, I know only a little. She was a dear friend of the young master. She once took care of him for a brief amount of time. That's all I know for certain. The purple-haired doll raised her eyebrow up further but paid no mind to it and then asked, there's one thing that's been grating on my gears. How's Papa gonna manage his public store when he is away? The dolls need his Biju Yukai to activate. The silver-eyed sibling turned to an almost finished doll with blonde pigtails and whisker-like marks on her cheeks, and next to her a large number of stacked trays with small black pearl-like objects with a glowing crimson core. The young master is already rectifying that. So friends, I end story.